Friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is really a pleasure and an honor to welcome you all here today. And I'd like to tell you first a little bit about feed. Because there are some aspects which are very important. One is that India is growing. There is no doubt about it that India is growing. We are doing well. Our agriculture is stable. That is also not to be doubted. But the fact is that somewhere in the policy debate in our country, the focus has been on growth. The focus of feed is on equitable growth, because growth without equity has its own set of complications, and I need not vent those expressions in this forum, because in this forum all of us are aware, because all of us are connected in some way or the other to agriculture and agricultural operations. We are aware of this. We are also aware of the fact that somewhere along the line in the entire discussion on agriculture in the country, the focus has been on farmers. And when we use the omnibus term farmer, it needs to be defined further. For example, if we use the term education, then the focus on primary education, the focus on higher education, the focus on institutions of excellence, I mean, all these are great. But we need to know what the focus is on. We are very clear in the Federation of Forum for Equitable Enterprises in Development that the focus has to be on the marginal and small farm. You know, you'll recall that in the Ministry of Agriculture, we have a small farmers development agency, which is called the Small and Marginal Farmers Development Agency. When we launched the SFDA, which was the precursor to the DRDAs, that was also Small Farmer Development Agency. But just as, there's a difference between micro enterprises and large enterprises, there's a lot of difference between micro enterprises and the MSME sector. That is why the government is now very clear that there is a micro sector and there's a medium, small industry sector, and then, of course, there's an industry sector. All the growth of all of them is important. But the growth of certain sectors requires greater handholding. It is not, we are not making the point that only the marginal farmer is the most important, but what we feel is that given the growing numbers of marginal farmers in the country, given the fact that land is a constraint, and unlike the website where you can keep expanding your, you pay the money and Google gives you more space. Unfortunately, here, even if you give Google Baba more money, you cannot create space, you cannot create land. And therefore, getting outputs from that particular piece of land and connecting it to the larger market is a major challenge for all of us. For all of us who may not be marginal farmers, who may not be in the business of agriculture, who may not be in the business of agri exports, but as Indians, as citizens of the world, as those who believe in sustainable development, and because India is also signatory to the SDGs, which is the Sustainable Development Goal, end to hunger, end to poverty, and an equitable development, this focus becomes very important. Friends, I will not talk about the report because we're going to be launching it just now. But because I was researching on Lal Bahadur Shastri these days, I mean, I'm writing a biography on Shastri ji. So way back in 1920s and 30s, when the UP Congress was looking at the land question, they were looking at what is the minimum size of holding that can possibly be allowed. And the fact that there has to be a limit to the holding, I mean, the upper limit and also smaller limit, because they felt that less than that, it could not work. Today, fortunately for us, what has happened is that there is an intervention called technology. Technology can transform even a very small plot of land into an enterprise. So, one thing is very clear, that unless the marginal peasant in this country is connected with the larger market, and when we say here, and in fact, we are very glad that FICCI has offered us this platform. Therefore, when we are saying that the marginal farmers' productivity and connectivity has to grow up, it is not something which can be done minus the large business. It cannot be done minus the government. It cannot be done minus the civil society. The interests of the marginal farmer, the interests of the small farmer, the interests of the large farmer will not always coincide. But we can minimize the differences, we can minimize those gaps. And what the marginal farmer needs today is access to markets. that access to market or access to state. You see, they are basically the institutions that we talk about in society. There is the institution of the state. Now, there is a limit to how much the state can reach out to. The state, therefore, finds it easier to reach out to farmers because the mechanism of the state, in fact, if you read the wonderful book by James Scott, Seeing Like a State, you will get an idea that the state wants to address issues, but the state can address only X number of issues, right? The market again can address many issues, but unless the marginal farmers can be connected can be brought together in groups, and if we can get, and the main thing about the marginal farmer is that he is running an informal enterprise. He is running an informal enterprise and wants to compete in the formal sector. So we have to ensure that the informal sector, the smallest of the informal sector, and we are talking about federations which exist across the country, from marginal farmers from Mokokchung to Malerkotla to wherever. How do we link the informal to the formal? How do we connect the marginal producer, make him or her a micro entrepreneur, and connect him to the larger world of markets, is something for which the feed stands. And we are very grateful that together with our partners, and many of our partners are present here today, we've done some, and this is also a very interesting point, that this is the first time in the country that a report on marginal farmers, a report which focuses primarily on marginal farmers, has come up, and we do hope that this will initiate a policy debate in this country. This will initiate a new set of dynamism. It will also ensure that the marginal farmers move from marginality, because while you cannot enhance the production space, with the interventions of technology, we can enhance productivity, and also with the intervention of technology, we can connect the informal to the formal. Let me welcome you all to this launch of Feed FICCI program and on the State of Marginal Farmers report. Thank you very much.
I go to the key findings now. The average land holding of marginal farmers is 1.22 acres, which is fairly consistent with the findings of the agricultural census, as well as what was found out in the NSS 77th round, which was 0.6 acres. The median land holding was about 1 acre. The average area of land leased in was 0.83 acres and leased out 0.76 acres, but that's not the point. The point really is that leased out in terms of marginal farmers is very, very less. I mean, whoever has land actually works on their land. So that's just 2.14% actually had leased out of their land. Leasing in land was about 11.12%, still not a very large phenomena of leasing in. 56% of the marginal farmers in our sample irrigated their land. Now, that which proves that about 50% was still rain-fed. Most of it was done through groundwater. The irrigation was through groundwater or through canal and flood irrigation. Now comes the income supplementation. Let's say about 69% of the sampled marginal farmer households were engaged in non-farm activities to supplement their income from crops. And among the people who actually supplemented it, you can see that daily wage labor is predominantly the activity which they engaged in terms of marginal farmers. About 78-79% of these farming households who did supplement their income did it through wage labor. Some basic facts which the survey revealed: close to 70% of the marginal farmers sold crops or byproducts, which means 30%. Around 30% did not sell, which would let us to conclude that these probably don't have adequate output to actually reach the market. They essentially did mostly self-consumption. The people who sold, the mean value of The product was about 60,510 rupees. The median value was about 40,000 rupees. The average annual income from non-farm activities was estimated to be around 60,000. The average annual income from wage activities was about 50,000. And the average annual farmers from livestock produce, which is also meat, eggs, and milk, was about 55,000 rupees. We took the largest incidence. The largest incidence was wage income. So we looked at the mean annual income of farmers who did farming as well as wage income was just a shade above 1 lakh. Looking into the channels which they used, only 31% or 32% sold through government procurement agencies. Rest of them all sold through informal arrangements. A very, very large part of the marginal farmers actually don't have access to the MSP pricing which the government gives because they don't sell there. Data says marginal farmers selling through government agencies 32%, not selling is about 68%, and the primary mix is paddy or rice, bit of wheat, some amount of soybean, maize, and cotton. Among the marginal farmers who sold their produce via government procurement channels, remember there was about 30% only or 32% who were selling to the government. 86% did express that they were happy with the price that they were getting. And of the people who were not selling it through government, well, the primary reasons are two. One is the government prices they believe were too low, and the second part is better rates were available in the open market. These two together consist of about 60% of the reasons of why people or marginal farmers don't sell through government channels. If you remember, this 86% of the people were very happy with the rates that they were giving. So this is an analysis of that 14% who don't who are dissatisfied with the rates, and this is the main reasons why they were saying either they were lower market than the market rates, or they were getting delayed payments. This makes it very clear that the PM Kisan is awareness level is very, very high, and so is penetration level. Kisan credit card among the marginal farmers is very, very low, which is a little bit of a concern. But if you look at most of the Bima Yojanas, the pension Yojana, or the Bima, or the Fasal Bima Yojana, the cognition levels are also low, the awareness levels are also low, the penetration levels were really, really low. And this is something which should be of concern. Awareness and utilization of government facilities, as you can say, everybody uses seed centers or fertilizer shops, but other than that, warehouse facilities, custom hiring centers, soil testing centers, the utilization of these facilities were very, very low among marginal farmers. 17% of marginal farmers were members of some sort of farmer cooperative. Only 6% were members of FPOs. And an overwhelming majority of the marginal farmers were not involved in any kind of farmer collective or cooperative organization during the survey year, which was the reference year for the last 12 months. 28% of the respondents were not aware about cooperatives or FPOs, which is very strange, but it was about nearly 30% of the people, or 1 into 3, were not aware about it. 24% did not even know what the benefits they can get by actually joining FPOs. Primary reasons for not joining, they were unaware of that facility, unaware of the benefits, and don't know how to become a member. So these are systemic issues which need to be tackled, I presume, by policymakers. About half of the marginal farmers receive some sort of subsidy from the or grant from the government, just half. And on an average, the marginal farmers receive somewhere around 6,374 rupees as subsidy from the central and state governments. Quantum of subsidy that they have received seems to have gone up with the holding sizes. Majority of the subsidy seems to have gone to marginal farmers who within them have a larger amount of holding. 54% of the marginal farmer respondents were impacted by natural calamities. It manifested by them harvesting less than half of what was expected, or harvested half of what was expected. So the natural calamities have always hit them in terms of their production capacity, which was either close to half or more than half of what they were producing earlier. How did they cope? They coped, 32% of them coped with working on others field as wage labor or working as, another 38% worked as non-agricultural labor. 13% actually did distress migration to other areas. Selling of assets as a district through distress sale was just 4%. It was not very high. I just wanted to reiterate once again that the focus of this study was not to do the same things which is available from other sources like the 77th round of NSS or the agricultural census. We wanted to focus a little bit more on the qualitative aspects, which was not covered in those surveys. So some of these questions included were perception of marginal farmers about their own economic condition now, and only 2.42% said it was much better. 34% actually said that compared to previous last 3 years, they have it is better. So about 34 plus 2, about 36% of the people said it was better. Close to 50% says that there has been no change in the last 3 years. The state is just the same. And the balance for people who have said that their situation has become worse than previously. Prospects and challenges of continuing with farming, we simply ask them that, would you continue with farming, or would you leave farming as an occupation? They don't want to leave. About 86-87% of the people would like to continue with their farming. Only 10% said they're going to reduce their time that they're spending on farming. If you look at willingness, we also asked a question is there about their willingness to sell land. Again, a very, very high proportion of the people want to hold on to their land despite the fact that their incomes are decreasing. Land is an asset which they are not going to get let go. 84% of the people saying that they are not willing to sell land. 13% have not made up their mind, but the fact remains that only 2% said that yes, they would sell their land. In terms of people who said that yes, I would consider reducing my my time spent on farming, or I really want to change from farming into something else. For those, the major reason is, as expected, low productivity, or the natural calamities having hit them quite frequently, and they have borne the brunt of it. So these are the two primary reasons why they want to leave. So thank you.
You are very well aware of this fact that 70% of our farm households, they are marginal farmers. Their average land holding size, of course, it is just 0.4 hectare. And can we imagine that can these households survive on this tiny pieces of land? Then what are the alternate opportunities for them? And besides the land constraints, they are also facing a lot of biotic and abiotic stresses. And the biggest challenge that is coming is the climate change. These people, they don't have adequate resources for managing the climate risks. They don't have adequate finances. They don't have adequate access to technologies for managing the risks. And they will be the most sufferer from this kind of the challenges that we are going to witness in the times to come. With this, of course, I am just showing you what is the status. What is the status of farmers' income in India? Now, if you look at these curves, so 70, this is earlier one, but the situation might have not changed. 70% of the farmers that I call it the low income farmers. At that time, their income was, per capita income was just 15,000 rupees per annum for 70%. Another 20%, of course, they have between 15 to 30,000, and the rest they have about 30,000 rupees. Now that means there are considerable disparities in income distribution in the farming sector. I categorize these households on low income farmers, middle income farmers, and the high income farmers. Low means less than 15,000, middle 15 to 30,000, and above 30,000 is higher. Let's see the composition of these farmers, how they comprise. Now first look at this composition by income class, low income class, middle income class. So now in low income class, what we find is that 75% of the farmers, they are marginal farmers. Likewise, in high income class also, by virtue of their dominance in the agrarian structure in India, they also fall in the high income class because of their certain other activities. But more interestingly, the composition of land class by income. Now, among the marginal farmers, 77% fall in the low income category, but at the same time, the 7% of them, they also fall in the high income country. That means there are certain factors that might be distinguished this 7% versus 77%. Now, another issue is that where these marginal farmers, small, low income marginal farmers, they are located. Are they located in Punjab or Bihar? So we have to, accordingly, we have to target. Now, if you once do a profiling along these lines of the marginal farmers, so they provide us, number of policy choices for evolving strategies for improving the income level of these marginal farmers. Their land holding size is pretty much the same, about 0.4 hectare of both. But if you look at the gross returns for low income farmers and the high income farmers, 7% high income low marginal farmers, almost 2.5 times larger. Their cost of production, the difference is not much. but again in the net returns almost 3 times more. That means with a slight improvement in their capital base, maybe through credit, etc., it is possible to shift a number of low income farmers to the high income groups because they might be lacking access to credit. Now, their cropping intensity, you see, for the high income farmers, it is almost, you say, 30-40% higher. But more importantly, what I feel this report didn't touch the high value commodities because that is where these farmers they have the advantage. The low income farmers they allocated just 6% of their area to high value commodity additional crops, fruits, vegetables, medicinal plants, and all those kind of things, as compared to about the 15% of the high income farmers. They are also more engaged in non-farm business activities. They are also have a higher, more engaged in wage employment and the salaries. But of course, in MG Narega, it is expected the low income farmers they have a greater engagement. The low income farmer they have less access to agricultural information. They have less access to institutional credit. They have lower marketed surplus. And for them, selling the small, tiny marketed surplus in the markets, it's, it is not remunerative. It's a transaction cost, etc. They are very high. And mostly what happens, they sell in the local markets or to the input dealers. And these, they are kind of, exploitative kind of tendencies are always there. Now then question arises where they are located. Now 50% or 52% of the low income marginal farmers, they are in the eastern India. And then it comes the central and the western India, another 20-25%. That together the 75% of the farmers, they are located in this western or central or the eastern India. So where we should focus on. Our strategies should be not on Punjab, but we should be more on Bihar. Low income farmers or the marginal farmers, their highest incidence is in Bihar. About 85% of the household, they are the marginal farmers, then the lowest in Punjab. But you look at the income distribution, the lowest income in Bihar and the highest in Punjab. That means you cannot, the marginal farmers of Bihar cannot be treated at par with the marginal farmer of Punjab in the policy making or the any strategies. So we should take into consideration. I don't know whether the central government can devise such kind of, because it is a state subject. That is the state government, they have to take a call on those kind of things. So they should not be treated at par. Now, as said by Dr. Chopra, there are limited scope for expanding the areas. Now, if you look at our net cropped area, it has been stagnated around 142 million hectares for the past 40 years or so. There is a very limited scope for enhancing income or the growth, agricultural growth through area expansion. So what are the opportunities? In the short run, the opportunities for them, as I showed in my slide, they lie in the diversification of the production portfolios towards livestock, towards fisheries, towards horticulture. And one of the important characteristics of these activities, because they generate a continuous stream of income. They don't involve much of the gestation period and all that. Moreover, they also act as a buffer against, income shocks or the climatic shocks. Once upon a time, there was a lot of debate on inverse size productivity relationship. And the explanation was in the labor endowment of the smallholder farmers. They have larger endowments, so they take better care. That's why they realize it. But over time, what has happened is, because of mechanization, that kind of advantage, it has disappeared. But if you look this kind of relationship at a disaggregated crop level kind things, so I did simply say for horticultural crops, that relationship is quite strong till now. So that is an advantage for the smallholder farmers. Now, after a lot of, persuasion, I was, when Dr. Harsh Bhanawala was chairman of NABARD, I just showed him that in Punjab, you raise one dairy animal or you cultivate 1 hectare of rice or paddy. Their cost of cultivation is almost same. And the returns are more from the dairy than compared to the rice and wheat. But why don't you give some kind of, Kisan credit card for the dairy animals? So, of course, for particularly for the meeting the short-term kind of credit requirements. So when we give the crop loans, why not that kind of things? It happened, but that project, I think it has been taken up by the Ministry of Energy, but that is in limbo. The banks are shy of advancing loans to the farmers, those who do not have the land. Still, they treat land as the basis for giving the credit card or Kisan credit card for the dairy farmers. But there are a lot of opportunities. Our dietary patterns are changing in the past towards the particularly towards this high value food commodities, be it the milk, meat, egg, fish, fruits, vegetables, and their demand is increasing continuously. In the years to one study was conducted, I think, by late Professor Hans bin Schwanger. He said that by 2040 in India's 40% of the food expenditure will be on dairy products. So that kind of demand is growth is there in this kind of things, and here there is an opportunity. The government's one district, one product program. Provide farmers everything. Identify the products suitable to the agroclimatic conditions of those districts. Provide farmer everything right from seed to sale. Surface irrigation. Why don't we go for kind of micro irrigation kind of things? And the resource conservation technology, we are talking about something on custom hiring kind of services, the aggregation kind of things and all this. And of course, keeping in view the climate change, we should not ignore for resilient crops or the resilient varieties providing to these farmers. What the farmer needs, provide him. He should access from there. Then, of course, the credit, as I said, that livestock, its contribution to agriculture GDP, it is more than 30%. But its share in credit, it is just 5%. Because credit to livestock sector, it is treated as investment credit that carries high rate of interest. So this is, and again, insurance kind of situation in livestock. Feed and fodder scarcity, it is universal, but it is localized. On the one hand, we are burning the crop residues, rice residues in Punjab and Haryana. In the Rajasthan, the farmers don't have the feed to feed their animals, fodder to feed them. So those are the kind of arrangements. So we should try to look into those kind of issues, promote those kind of things. And finally, of course, the investment in agriculture research and development, that is really very essential. For the past 4 or 5 years, the allocation to ICR for agriculture, it has been stagnant. It is only in this budget about 9 or 10% of the hike has been given. Now, I tell you the kind that at times to come, the research agenda is going to focus more on climate change and biofortification. ICR has developed a number of climate resilient varieties and also biofortified varieties to combat nutrition and climate change risk. But if it is not adequately funded, such kind of efforts, they may remain dwarfed. Likewise in the extension system also. Then of course, ultimately I say that for marginal farmers, why we keep them marginal or keep them stuck in agriculture sector. Let's create opportunities for them outside the agriculture. The future for marginal farmers lies outside agriculture in the long run. And this has come out very clearly when I say the profiling of the farmers, as I said, 7% versus 77%. We should not create, the opportunities outside agriculture, reduce excessive employment pressure from agriculture. A broad-based growth of the rural non-farm sector. The reason is that agriculture generates a lot of surpluses, but where that surplus goes, So Punjab produces wheat, but atta is made in Karnataka, Bangalore. Why not create some kind of agro-industrialization, promote agro-industrialization in those kind of where the location, and here again I say that one district, one product concept, it's very good but needs to be sincerely implemented. Apart from that, of course, this is on the agriculture sector. The multiplier effects of this kind of investment in the non-farm sectors, they will be very large, because once you establish one activity, other ancillary activities will come up, providing income and opportunities. For that, of course, the skill development and rural enterprises, infrastructure, all those kind of things are required. This budget, I consider this budget a kind of game changer. People may differ in their opinions because it focuses on sustainable development of agriculture and the rural areas. All these schemes, you know, whether they are successful or implemented or not, but they are really very good schemes, particularly for improving efficiency and sustainability. They are a PM Pranam, unbalanced use of fertilizer, incentives to the state governments. Then, of course, that POs, dairy cooperatives, outreach, and all those kind of things, they are all already there. But more importantly, when we're talking about the marginal farmers, this scheme of PM Vishwakarma Kaushal Samman, that's really a good scheme for the landless and the marginal farmers, the artisans who are engaged in their traditional arts, but were unable to sell their produce, or because of that modernization, they have started somewhat you kind of relegated to the background. So, in that sense, this budget provides a lot of opportunities. It lays a foundation for the sustainable, equitable, and growth of the rural sector. Final remarks is that we have to target the opportunities I have been discussing. First, identify who have low incomes or disadvantage in terms of access to any kind of things, technology markets. Then identify where the low income households are located, what are their locational characteristics, the rainfall, irrigation, power, roads, infrastructure, communication. I did some this analysis particularly on infrastructure, and what I found is most of these farmers, they are located in the regions where the infrastructure is very poor. And then, of course, identify the activities which are suitable to those people, and provide all kind of facilities to her improvement, and this will provide us a menu of the strategies or the choices for enhancing farmers' income. Thank you.
Key takeaways is number one, India should have a differential policy for the marginal farmers and states. Eastern states should be targeted for because of dominance of small farms and also migration pattern. Second, consolidation of land is not possible, so cooperative farming is hard to think of, but microfinance or self-help groups can be thought of. But sir, scalability is an issue. We need to improvise that because microfinance started by Yunus, and now India is not really matching up with those expectations. Third, farmers' cards should be given to tenants and women farmers to avail the benefits given by the government under various schemes. Fourth, risk mitigation strategies through crop diversification and crop insurance can be strengthened. To promote livestock, infrastructure, veterinary hospitals, app-based services, loans, KCC, as Dr. Birthal is saying, loans should be given. That is the suggestion. Crop diversification is important, especially importance should be given to horticulture because smaller holdings have higher returns due to involvement of family labor. So the focus has to be on one district, one crop, and again regional branding. So important to increase irrigation intensity, and penetration of micro irrigation is very important. Again, improve warehousing accessibility through aggregators, and women's access to technology, which is very important given that men migrate. So women do not have machinery to operate, and how do women operate? Women friendly machinery is not available, so how do they operate? Either they connect with the custom hiring centers, which is again a suggestion, and I don't think anything much is happening at the field level. So women training program, women machinery, and if I was just we were doing a research and we found that there is so much focus on tractors in our country, there is hardly any focus on small machinery. So we just jotted down the data, how much agriculture machinery do we import. So we are importing a lot from China and Thailand, and Europe. So we don't have, I mean, FICCI should encourage companies to make investment in small machinery. Next suggestion is reorient agriculture extension services towards small and marginal farmers. For allied sector, extension services is very much missing, so we need to relook credit needs through melas, community action for tackling stress, skill formation, involvement of KVKs in dissemination of information about government scheme is must. State agriculture universities can be involved in dissemination of knowledge. Why do we all the time think of KVKs? Why not state agriculture universities? We can have mobilized students and other people to do some kind of extension services. So To sum up the report and the major findings, small and marginal farmers make 46% of operational land holdings in India, which contribute 51% of total agriculture output and 70% of high value crops. Three-fourths of farmers are categorized marginal and possess less than 1 hectare of land and hence highly dependent on other sources for livelihood. So there's a direct relationship between farm size and income, which means that bigger the farm, higher is the income. This may imply a decline in the importance of crop cultivation. However, farmers desire to leave farming because of declining economic surplus and net returns and wages risk, but they are not willing to part with their land because of emotional, social, and cultural reasons. This is what Dr. Ghosh finding is. So now, since agriculture and irrigation are state subject, so we must make a case that each state has to be in a mission mode with centers backing, of course, to revive the interest of marginal farmers in agriculture. Interventions are needed at the farm level. First, to raise crop productivity through advanced technology. Second, mitigate yield and price risk. Third, provide an easy flow of institutional credit or through microfinance. And fourth, improve marketing arrangements either through FPOs, ENAM, contract farming, retail chain, and also make measures to estimate losses, because as per the latest report, 30% of the agriculture produce is lost. So at the macro level, there is dire need of capital infusion in rural infrastructure and cold storage facilities, which can incentivize private investment. A big push is also needed for rural agro manufacturing for processing of agriculture produce as well as employment generation. Skill development, training, especially to women farmers, is must for making them learn primary processing of their produce. So we do hope that these policy measures, if taken seriously, can contribute to make farming a business activity for the marginal farmers and generate interest of the future generations.